Hello everyone and welcome back to another deck guide, this time featuring the Virtual World archetype. This is a series of cards that is highly focused on the level 3, 6, and 9 slots for the purposes of Synchro and Xyz plays. In exchange, they largely lock you out of Link summons altogether, so they play pretty different from more modern decks, while still being able to put up pretty scary boards and extend through some disruptions. In exchange, the deck is a little bit tough to pilot, and there are specific decision trees that you have to kind of keep in mind as you go. So if mastering this difficult deck and being rewarded with tons of extension and some unique end boards sounds fun to you, let's get started. So first up is Lulu, and we're going to use her as an example of how the first half of the deck works. Most of the Virtual World monsters have the text that if this card is in your hand, you can target a Virtual World card on the field, send a different type of Virtual World card, monster, spell, or trap, from deck to graveyard, summon this card, and then they have a third effect. So all of them are a Foolish Burial based on what you're targeting. It has to be different from that. So if you target a monster, you can send a spell or a trap. You target a trap, you can send a monster or spell. And for Lulu's part, when she is summoned, you grab the third type of card, not the one you targeted or the one you sent. You grab the third one, add it to hand. So really strong starter, able to get you a monster through a couple of different ways, so that you can continue comboing from there. So Jiji is the exact same thing, except instead of adding a card from deck to hand, after all of the normal stuff and he's summoned, you can add a Virtual World monster from grave to hand on end phase. It's a floating effect, and this is also where I'll bring up that the whole archetype is based on Psychic and Worms type monsters, so there's some synergy with other decks like Punk or Sword Soul that you can do using those halves of the deck. We're not worried about that this time around. Next up is going to be Lily. So Lily does all of the same stuff as the other ones, except it sends the third type of card from deck to graveyard as well, so it's a double Foolish Burial in addition to a body. Then we've got Lao Lao. Lao Lao, when it hits the field, special summons any other Virtual World from your graveyard to your field, but negates its effects so that you can use it as material a second time. Then we hit the other half of the deck. So this is all stuff that we want to Foolish Burial off of the first half of the deck. So Nyan Nyan, in addition to being a perfectly acceptable normal summon, if she's in the graveyard and you summon a level 3, she can summon herself back as a tuner, but banish her when she leaves the field. That's okay, because when she is banished, you can shuffle a banished Virtual World card back into your deck. Interestingly enough, this is one of very, very few cards in the entire game that can interact with face-down banished cards. So that's very important because we are playing 3 of Pot of Desires. Pot of Desires banishes 10 cards from the top of your deck to draw 2. So that's why we're playing 2 of Nyan Nyan and King Long, because we don't really want to banish both of them if we can help it. But if Nyan Nyan does get banished from our normal combo shenanigans, we can recycle a material that we banished off of Desires that we did not want to actually get rid of. It's pretty cool. Next up is Virtual World Gate Kinglong, which is a continuous spell that you can banish a Virtual World card from your graveyard to target and negate the effects of a face-up monster until end of turn. This effect would be so much better if it was quick effect, but you have to use it on your turn, which kind of relegates it to pseudo board breaker, but you already have to have kind of a board established to use it, so it's not that great. But its graveyard effect is much better, because you can banish this from your graveyard to add a Virtual World monster from deck to hand, then discard a card. So this kind of acts as a pseudo starter. If you can get it into the graveyard, it's the first Foolish Burial you want to do in the vast majority of cases. You do not want this card on your field, you want it in your graveyard. Then we play 3 of Virtual World City Kauwloon. This has a whole lot of text you're going to completely ignore. The only important part is that it allows you to place a Virtual World Gate face up in your spell and trap zone. That allows you to put a trap, which then allows you to start all of your target, Foolish Burial, summon shenanigans from there. You will sometimes get the effect that all of your stuff gains 200 attack this turn, but we're not really trying to put 3 or 4 gates on the battlefield. We would much rather have most of them in the graveyard. Then we play one of Xuanwu, and Xuanwu's on-field effect is pretty mediocre as well. During the battle phase, if you control this and another gate, you can target a monster on the field to change its battle position. So you can put one of your guys in defense so you don't take damage, or you can put one of the opponent's cards in defense so it can't attack. But, you know, eh. But more importantly, if this card's in your graveyard, you can banish it and then summon a virtual world monster from your graveyard and discard a card. So this allows you just recursion, and there are some combo chains where this actually ends up bringing back the Nyan Nyan as well as like a Lulu or Jiji. So it's pretty cool. It can sometimes get 2 bodies for the cost of discarding a card. Then we've got our last trap, which is Chushe, and this is actually a good one to put on the field because you can target a face-up card on the field, shuffle 2 banished cards back into your deck, and destroy that card. So it's just a good old-fashioned disruption on a trap. And then if this one's in your graveyard, you can banish it to increase or decrease the level or rank of one of your monsters by 3. So that allows you to modulate your 6s down to 3 or your 3s up to 6s. You can also modulate your 6s to a 9, but we don't really take advantage of that in this deck. It just lets you sync your guys up for Synchro and Xyz plays. It's great. Then we play 3 of Emergency Teleport. This is just a good extender. It allows you to summon either Nyan Nyan or Lulu, so you get a level 3 either non-tuner or a tuner. And then you can use those for all of your targeted Foolish Burial summon shenaniganry. It's just an extender that can kind of help you get started because this is a 2-card combo deck. We do need a card on field and a card in hand to really do stuff. So Teleport can just take care of putting the one on field. Then we play a decent sized Kashtira package. We play 2 Fenrir's, 2 Unicorns, and a Birth. So starting with Fenrir, both of the Kashtiras can special summon themselves from hand if you have no monsters on field, so they're supposed to be the first thing you do in any given turn. And then Fenrir, during your main phase, can Ignition Speed, add another Kashtira monster from deck to hand. That can be another copy of Fenrir or your copy of Unicorn, and then it just sits on the field looking pretty, and if the opponent activates a monster effect, you get to just banish something on the field face down. Just get rid of it totally. So it is a board breaker in that if the opponent tries to use the board that they've set up, they start losing pieces to Fenrir. We can also use either of these guys for a level 10 Synchro alongside our Lulu or a down level Lao Lao or a Nyan Nyan that came back from the grave, whatever works to get us our level 10. Then Unicorn, same thing, can special summon itself for free and can also search, but this time it searches a Kashtira spell, which is always going to be our Birth, and then if the opponent activates a monster effect while it's on the field, you can, instead of just banishing something, you look at their extra deck and pick one to banish face down. So this is really, really good against fragile decks that consider the extra deck kind of a sacred space that no one's ever going to touch. We don't care, we're going to go in there and we're going to banish the Fiendsmith sequence and they're going to have a bad day. It's great. Then the Birth that we have searched off of our Unicorn allows us to normal summon our Kashtiras without a tribute. Doesn't come up terribly often, but it's good to be aware of. In case you open both of them, you'll special summon the Unicorn and then grab Birth, play Birth, then you can normal summon Fenrir. It's not too bad. More importantly, allows you to special summon one of your Kashtiras that has been banished or is in your graveyard, so you can use either of them for synchro plays and then bring them back for their own disruptive effect on your end board. It's pretty cool. And then least importantly, you can, if your opponent activates a spell and you still have a Kashtira on the field, you can banish 3 cards from their graveyard face down. Just graveyard disruption. It's not bad, we don't hate it. Then we're playing 11 pieces of non-engine, including the aforementioned Pot of Desires. This deck discards a couple of cards as it goes through its main combo, so we like to pull an extra card from the deck with Desires, and we don't mind the banishing face down because, as aforementioned, Nyan Nyan can put stuff that we really need back in our deck, so we're never hitting core combo pieces in this deck. We just get an extra card. Even if we end up discarding it, that's okay. Onto the extra deck, the first thing I want to talk about is Ultimate Zulkin. This is super easy to make in this deck because it requires a tuner and non-tuner that are at least level 5 and are the same level. So we're always going to do 6s. It's really easy to get a level 6 tuner and a level 6 non-tuner on the field in this deck, slap them into Zulkin, who does absolutely nothing in and of himself. But When you have a Zolkin on the field and you set a spell or trap on your field, he immediately summons a level 7 or 8 Dragon Synchro from your deck. So it's going to summon a Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon, which is a much better boss monster. So this level 8 Synchro that we can't really summon by any other means outside of Ultimate Zolkin can negate and destroy a monster effect, and it gains a ton of attack either during battle or after negating, so it's just pretty good to have on your board. Then we get into the stuff we're actually summoning. So Juju is our level 6 virtual world. We can make this off of any number of things, and it's kind of a weird little guy. So it can't be destroyed by battle or card effects as long as you have virtual world stuff in the graveyard, basically. You have to have 2 monsters with the same type and attribute but different names. So that can be either Yan Yan and Lulu and Lao Lao, any combination of those two, or a Jiji and a Lily. But basically you'll always have that in this deck. And then you can also banish 2 of those cards from your graveyard to targeted send something from the field to the graveyard. So it's not a quick effect, it's kind of interesting. You kind of just go through him on the way to other things and use him to send cards to the graveyard just as a board breaking mechanism. Then we have Stardust Charge Warrior, who when synchro summoned draws you a card. So sometimes we will have only level 3s on the field and we need to kind of clear some space to keep summoning more stuff. We can go into Charge Warrior, get a free card out of the deal, clear up some space. Same thing with Coral Dragon. So Coral Dragon, when it goes to the graveyard, draws you a card. It's a level 6 tuner. So similar thing, we clear up space, combine our cards together, draw cards out of the deal. Coral Dragon can also discard a card to target and destroy an opponent's card. Doesn't come up terribly often, but it's important to be aware of. And lastly, for our 6s is a Muddy Mud Dragon. Well, what's he doing in here? Well, this card can be used as a substitute for any one specific fusion material on a fusion monster card, and it also allows you to fusion summon using him. So it skips polymerization and also skips one monster name on a card. That's pretty cool because we make 6s like nobody's business, and that allows us to go into Red Eye's Dark Dragoon, because the Muddy Mud Dragon itself will pretend to be Dark Magician, and then you can use a dragon effect monster like, oh, say a Spent Ultima Zolkin after you've already set a card and summoned your Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon. You'll see that combo in the combo section. But once we get Red Eye's Dark Dragoon, he's an absolute house. He can't be destroyed by card effects, and he can't be targeted with card effects. And once per turn, you can destroy a monster and burn the opponent for a bunch of damage, and you can also discard a card to Omni-Negate with him, which is pretty dope. Back to Synchros now. We've got a Virtual World QB Shen, which is the big boss monster for Virtual World itself. This is a Floodgate style card that at level 9 makes it so any card sent from field to graveyard is banished instead. So it's not a full on everything gets banished dimension shifter type effect. So it doesn't stop every graveyard based deck, but anything that Link climbs, for example, that's like trying to send their stuff to the graveyard and bring it back and use it again over and over, yeah, those get screwed over by Shen. It also really hurts against Labyrinth, it hurts Snake Eyes, it hurts Fiendsmith. Just a lot of good decks and a lot of stuff that's relevant right now just loses to Shen. It's great. It also has a minor effect where once per turn, anytime any of your monsters declare an attack, you can return a banished monster to the graveyard, so that allows us to reuse our own cards that we have banished. And then we play a Wolf Riot. This is just another level 9 that we can make. We make them pretty easily, and this one is a little bit weird. It starts at 2500 attack, but every time a monster effect is activated, its attack goes up by 300. Once it hits 4000, it quits gaining more attack, but at that point you can quick effect shuffle it and all of your opponent's monsters into the decks. So that makes it so you can kind of prime this on your turn. Maybe they give you the last couple of procs that you need, and then it's just a board wipe. It's pretty cool. We also play a Shengying as our last synchro, so this is what we're going into off of one of our tuners and a Kashtira monster. It is a level 10. And it gets bigger based on every banished card, which means that with Shen on the field, it gets pretty huge pretty quick, but it also makes the opponent's monsters lose attack for every banished card, so that's pretty sick. It also, if it would be destroyed, you can just banish a card from your graveyard instead. That's not a once per turn, so it's effectively indestructible and just gets stronger if you try. And then, if any card is banished by his effect or anything else, you can banish a card on field and in a graveyard. So it is a double disruption if they try to get rid of it. If anything gets banished by Shenshin, you can immediately use this as a disruption. He's just pretty solid all around as a level 10, and he's the best option since Baron is not legal in the TCG. Then we play a Totem Bird. This is a really cool little card that not that many decks get to play because it requires 2 level 3 wind monsters to make, but it's just a spell trap negate by detaching 2 materials, and then when it has no materials, it loses 300 attack. So it's just a spell trap negate that we can make, and we'll normally make it towards the end of our combo with a resurrected Lulu and a resurrected Yan Yan because they're both level 3 winds. We can slap them together into Totem Bird, and then just let that spell trap negate sit on the field. It's pretty cool. We play Virtual World Shell Jaja, so this is an actual Virtual World monster that you can detach a material to make something indestructible by battle until the end of the opponent's turn, and then after damage calculation, if this battled an opponent's monster, you can banish that monster. So this is just really good at facilitating Zeus plays, basically, so you can make itself indestructible, swing at something, banish whatever monster it battled, then you can go into a Downerd Magician who has no effects that actually matter, but you can make it for free with a rank 3 Xyz monster, so Jaja goes into Downerd, and then you can go into Zeus after that. So Zeus is what we're actually after in this line because it allows you to detach 2 materials to send all cards on the field to the graveyard besides himself. So if you summon a Jaja, go detach a material to make himself indestructible. He's at 1 material. You attack. Then after battle, go into Downerd, now it has 2 materials. Go into Zeus, now it has 3 materials. Zeus also has an effect where if any of your cards are destroyed, you can attach a card from your hand, deck, or extra deck to him as material, so that triggers and gives him the 4th material to do 2 activations. His Send, his mass board wipe, is not a once per turn, so at that point you can nuke the entire board twice until the opponent just gives up. It's pretty cool. Then lastly, we play Goblin's Crazy Beast. This is R1 rank 6 Xyz. You can also play Lars, I'll talk about that in a second, but Crazy Beast itself has a disruption where you can detach 2 materials to attach a spell trap from the field to him. That's surprisingly relevant against a lot of decks that are really good right now. A lot of decks use field spells, a lot of decks use continuous spells, and Crazy Beast just says, nah, I'm gonna negate and attach that. It's pretty dope. What's even cooler is that if a monster you control would be destroyed by card effect, you can detach a material from Crazy Beast. Instead, this is not once per turn, so by default, he will save you from 2 Raigekis. They need the 3rd to actually clear your board. And then lastly, if this card is in your graveyard, you can summon it back, and if we played the actual Goblin cards, you could attach them to him as material, which is pretty cool. We don't have any, but he can summon himself on subsequent turns either way, which is just, you know, recursion's important. It's good to have, and he's not a small body. 2700 is pretty good. If you don't want to play Crazy Beast, you can also play Evilzar Lars. Evilzar Lars is also a rank 6 that if this card has material, your opponent cannot target it with monster effects specifically. Not terribly important, but if they activate a card or effect, you can detach 2 materials from Lars to negate 1 card on the field. It does not have to be the card that they activated, but it does have to be on the field. That means Lars cannot negate an Ash Blossom, but it can negate spells and it can negate like an Evenly Match that the opponent plays because Evenly Match hits the field at some point during its resolution. So it's just a single Omni negate that kind of has weird restrictions. I also threw Solemn Judgment in here because if you want to play that instead of or split with your Infinite Impermanence, or maybe you want to play it in your sideboard or what have you, it's just a counter trap that can stop anything that would wipe out your board completely. Mostly this card is here because if we make a board with Shenshin against an opponent where Shenshin just wins the game automatically, like a Labyrinth player, then Solemn Judgment can protect the Shenshin to make sure that nothing happens and just kind of tighten the lock around the opponent. The problem is that it does take up those non-engine slots that we don't have a whole ton of in this deck, and it is only particularly good going first. So if you wanted to, you can play these in your main deck in place of like a Fenrir and just hope to go first, because Fenrir is much better going second, and kind of swap these between your sideboard based on what you're going, first or second. But anyways, that's going to be it for the deck profile, guys. Let's get into some combos. Alright, so for our first combo, you're going to need Lulu and Kauwloon in hand. This is going to be our first starter setup for the deck. Kauwloon is really, really great to see in hand because it lets you put Chushay on the field, which just gives you a lot more options than normal summoning a monster and then starting your special summons off of a monster rather than a trap. Let's get started and show you what I mean. So we're going to activate Kauwloon to put Chushay on the field, and then Lily in hand can target the Chushay to send a spell, and then add a Lily to hand. Lily can then target our Lulu and send a trap to graveyard, and then we also send another spell, which will be follow-up for next turn. We banish one of the spells and discard a card to grab Lao, go into our first synchro, which is Shen, summon the Lao by sending Nyan to graveyard, and then make a Crazy Beast with our 2 6s. And then the Nyan and Lulu both come back thanks to us banishing our Xuanwu, and then we can overlay both of those because they're level 3 wins into a Totem Bird for the Spell Trap Negate. So this is going to be our end board here. We've got a single Spell Trap Negate on Totem Bird. We banish anything going to the graveyard off of Shen. Goblin's Crazy Beast can eat a spell or trap, as well as protecting our entire board from destruction up to 2 times. And then Chushay is a targeted destruction by shuffling both of our banished cards back into the deck. So 4 disruptions, not too bad. Cool? Cool. Alright, so our next combo is going to look pretty different because we have to start our special summons using a normal summoned monster rather than a trap. So let's get started. We're going to normal summon the Jiji and then use Lulu targeting Jiji to send Kinglong to the graveyard and grab a Chushay to hand. That is why it is different, because we do not get as many monster materials. We're going to banish the Kinglong to grab Lao, and then we're going to sink into our virtual world Juju. Then we can summon the Lao, which also brings back Lulu, and then we're going to use our 2 6s to go into Ultimate Zolkin, set the Chushay that we grabbed earlier, which allows us to summon a Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon, and then we got one more trick up our sleeves because we can use Xuanwu to bring back our 3, and then go into a Muddy Mud Dragon, which we can use to fuse our spent Ultimate Zolkin and itself into a Red Eyes Dark Dragoon. So then on the opponent's turn, we can activate our Chushay. We still have 2 cards banished, so that's going to be a Destruction, along with a Monster Negate and Destruction, and an Omni Negate and Destruction. So 3 disruptions, but they're very potent, or 2 of them are very potent disruptions, so it's still not too bad of an end board. I hesitate to call this one a combo because it's more of just a display of why the Kashtiras are in this deck and just like a little quick 2-card thing that you can do with them. So let's go ahead. We're going to special summon the Unicorn because we have no monsters, which lets us grab Birth. We can then normal summon Lulu, or, and I want to stress at this point, you want to go through as much of the virtual world combos you possibly can before you go into the Shengying. Just be aware that as long as you end with a level 3 tuner on board, you can use the Unicorn and the level 3 tuner to go into Shengying. Then we can activate Birth to bring back the Unicorn, which is a disruption in and of itself. So just by basically having access to both engines, you end up with 2 extra disruptions here. That is why the Kashtiras are particularly good in this deck. Cool, cool. And we're back with closing thoughts on our virtual world deck. So I want to point out that this is a little bit of an older archetype. It showed up in 2020, so it's not like completely archaic, but it was before everyone got 1-card starters and everyone had cards that did 3 things. And so it was kind of unique at the time because each card did so much for the deck. That's a little bit less unique nowadays, but because it was ahead of its time, the deck does hold up pretty well, and I feel like if they wanted to give it support, it could become meta relevant quite easily with the right spell. And I say spell specifically because of Virtual World City Kowloon. So Kowloon, the effects that we never use, say that you apply the following effects based on the number of virtual world gates you control. Note that it has 4 as an option. There are not 4 virtual world gates in the game. There are 3. So in order to actually activate that effect, you would need multiples of one of them. So I feel like it's just ripe for support that they just give us a continuous spell that, you know, when played searches a monster or something. That would be a 1-card combo starter for the deck. Quite simple, and it would also give us the requisite number of gates for Kauwloon to actually function without having multiple useless cards on the field. So I feel like it would be quite simple, and honestly, I'm mad that they haven't supported it yet, because it annoys me to no end that there is not 4 virtual world gates, even though Kauwloon says that they're supposed to be. Outside of that, if you do end up liking this deck, there's plenty you can do with it. It has a pretty large engine. You can see that the virtual world cards themselves take up 21 slots in this deck, and then the E-tellies, which pretty much always go with it, are another 3. So we only have 16 non-engine, but you can reduce the size of this engine if you wanted to, like knock out a Yan Yan, only play 1 King Long, maybe take out 1 Lily, etc. And then you can also play it with like Sword Soul. You can play it with Punk, because Punk can 1-card combo you into the virtual world stuff, which is really cool. It's just that both of those engines are pretty big, so you have very little room for non-engine, or you end up playing like well over 40 doing that, but it does work quite well together. All of this to say that this is a deck that, while maybe it's a little bit older, it definitely has shown its staying power. There are still people that play regionals and do quite well. Maybe not, you know, winning, maybe not finals, but they'll make top cut with Virtual World, and that's kinda dope for a 5-year-old deck. Just having easy access to both a Crystal Wing and Red-Eyes Dark Dragoon is pretty gross in and of itself, and the deck just does fun things. I'm not the biggest fan of link slot decks, so I appreciate that we literally can't use links whatsoever when those are the most generic thing that most people are playing at this point. But anyways, we'll leave it at that. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.